11:47 p.m., the northern Persian Gulf, 63 nautical miles south of the Iranian coast. USS Cole's bottom-mounted sonar just classified a contact directly beneath the ship's keel, a mine. The ship was making 9 knots. It was 9 meters above the contact. The detonation threshold of a moored influence mine is a pressure differential created by a vessel passing within approximately 5 meters of the sensing element. 9 meters, 9 knots. The helmsman had no time to turn. Welcome to Navy Beacon, where we break down the operations that define sea power. To understand how USS Cole ended up 9 meters above an Iranian mine in the northern Persian Gulf, you need to understand both the geography and the intelligence failure that placed her there. Because neither the ship nor her crew had made an error. They had been routed into a minefield that should not have existed by an intelligence system that had failed to detect it being laid. The northern Persian Gulf, the waters within approximately 100 nautical miles of the Iranian and Iraqi coasts, is the most operationally active section of the Gulf for U.S. Navy operations. It is also the section of the Gulf where Iran's mining threat is historically highest. Iran has mined the Gulf before. In the tanker war of 1987 and 1988, Iranian mines damaged dozens of commercial vessels and a U.S. frigate. The lessons from that period shaped how the U.S. Navy thinks about the mine threat in Persian Gulf waters. Those lessons included one that is directly relevant to what happened to USS Cole. Influence mines are nearly impossible to detect with a hull-mounted sonar unless you are operating in a specific mine hunting mode at low speed, because influence mines that are triggered by the magnetic signature, acoustic signature, or pressure wake of a passing vessel rather than by physical contact, are designed to sit on the bottom and be invisible until they detonate. USS Cole was not operating in mine hunting mode. She was transiting at 9 knots on an assigned route from her patrol station to a fueling rendezvous with USNS Arctic, operating to the south. The mine she had passed over at 11:47 p.m. was a moored influence mine, a newer type than the contact mines that had characterized earlier Gulf conflicts. Iran had acquired this technology, developed domestic versions, and had deployed them in this engagement in a pattern designed to exploit exactly the routing and speed that USS Cole was using. The mine did not detonate, not because the ship had done anything right, because the mine's influence fuse was set to a pressure sensitivity threshold designed to ensure that a passing vessel above 9 meters did not trigger it. The mine was waiting for a vessel that came closer. The ship behind USS Cole was USS San Jacinto, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser making the same 9-knot transit. The cruiser's deeper draft brought her keel to within 5.5 meters of the mine. The mine detonated at 11:52 p.m. A moored influence mine detonating 5.5 meters below a ship's keel does not create a simple explosion. The energy from the detonation, typically between 130 and 300 kilograms of high explosive in Iranian pattern influence mines, creates a high-pressure gas bubble that expands rapidly in the water. The bubble rises toward the ship's hull at high speed, accelerating as water pressure decreases with depth. When the gas bubble reaches the hull, it has expanded to a diameter of several meters and is traveling at high velocity. The interaction between the rising high-pressure gas bubble and the ship's keel is called a bubble pulse. It flexes the hull upward with enormous force, not a single sharp impact, but a sustained push that bends the hull like a beam under load. The bending force can crack hull frames, rupture fuel and water systems, and in severe cases cause the hull to break. USS San Jacinto displaced 9,800 tons. Her keel was 5.5 meters above the mine. The bubble pulse hit her hull at 11:52 and 14 seconds p.m. The ship was lifted approximately 2 feet by the energy of the pulse, not a visible above-water motion, but a structural response measured by the subsequent hull survey's finding of deflection in 3 main deck frames. 8 hull frames in the keel area sustained crack damage. The port shaft seal ruptured, flooding the port stern tube compartment. The engineering spaces experienced power interruptions as the shock transmission through the hull tripped circuit breakers throughout the propulsion and electrical systems. In the Combat Information Center, the shock was severe enough to unseat every operator from their chairs simultaneously. Equipment that had not been properly secured against shock went airborne. 2 computers fell from their mounts. 1 fire control panel cracked its casing when it struck the deck. 11 sailors were injured by the shock. 7 were treated aboard for injuries from impact with equipment and bulkheads. 4 were more seriously injured. Damage Controlman First Class. Anthony Reed sustained a spinal compression injury when he was slammed into his damage control console. He was medevaced by helicopter and did not return to shipboard duty for 6 months. 3 others, 2 engineers and a CIC operator, sustained fractures and concussions requiring medevac. USS San Jacinto was operational. She was flooding in the port stern tube compartment at a rate that the damage control team assessed as manageable. Her speed was reduced to 6 knots on single-shaft propulsion, while the damaged shaft was isolated. She did not sink, but she was damaged, slowed, and trailing hydraulic fluid from the ruptured port shaft seal into the northern Gulf's dark water. The commanding officer of USS San Jacinto, Captain Elena Torres, was on the bridge. She had been on the bridge since the formation's departure from the patrol station at 10:45 p.m., a standard precaution during northern Gulf transits. The shock had thrown her against the bridge console. She had a cut above her left eye from the impact, but remained in command throughout. Her first transmission after the explosion was made at 11:52:34 a.m., 20 seconds after the detonation. Navcent, San Jacinto, mine strike, single explosion below keel, taking flooding aft, manageable single shaft, 6 knots. Request MCM and medevac. USS Cole, hold your position. USS Cole, ahead of San Jacinto, had not been hit. But Captain Torres's instruction to hold position was correct and critical. If there was one mine beneath San Jacinto, there were likely more. Cole, proceeding ahead, was moving into an unknown minefield. USS Cole came to all stop at 11:52:48 a.m. The route ahead was unknown. The route behind was now known to contain at least one mine. The 2 ships were stopped in the northern Persian Gulf, in the dark, with an undefined mine threat around them. The mine countermeasures helicopter assigned to the task group, an MH-53E Sea Dragon from USS Incheon, was 68 nautical miles south. Flight time, 52 minutes. 52 minutes of 2 ships stationary in a potential minefield. What the crew of USS Cole and USS San Jacinto did not know in the first minutes after the detonation was how the minefield had been laid, how extensive it was, or how long it had been there. The mine-laying operation had been conducted over 2 nights, 14 and 15 days before the engagement, by 2 Iranian vessels. The vessels were not military. They were IRGC-controlled commercial fishing dhows that had been fitted with bottom-drop mine deployment equipment. A hydraulic door in the keel that allowed mines stored in the bilge to be dropped through the hull without external visibility. The deployment technique was designed specifically to defeat aerial surveillance. A dhow deploying mines through a bottom door while moving at normal fishing speed at night shows no visible indication of mine laying from any altitude. No deck activity. No equipment visible on the hull. No deviation from normal vessel behavior patterns. The 2 dhows had deployed 19 mines across a stretch of the standard transit corridor that U.S. Navy ships used regularly between their northern patrol stations and their southern fueling rendezvous points. The mines had been positioned at depths between 18 and 24 meters, deep enough to avoid detection by a ship's keel-mounted sonar in normal transit mode, but shallow enough to engage large warships with drafts of 25 feet or more. 19 mines, across a 9 nautical mile stretch of the transit route. USS Cole had transited 9 of those miles. She had passed over or near an unknown number of mines without triggering them, because the influence fuse thresholds had been set for vessels with drafts greater than her own. USS San Jacinto's deeper draft had triggered the mine. How many of the remaining 18 mines were between the 2 ships, and open water was unknown. Captain Torres made a decision that the after-action review would later assess as both tactically sound and operationally creative. She requested that all vessels in the area with bottom-mounted sonar immediately begin a coordinated active sonar sweep of the corridor, sharing data on the tactical network. USS Cole was already doing this. A P-3 Orion maritime patrol aircraft, older than the P-8 but equipped with a magnetic anomaly detector, was overhead within 22 minutes and began flying mad search patterns over the surrounding water, looking for the magnetic signatures of the mine casings. The MAD data from the P-3 combined with the sonar data from USS Cole built a partial picture of the minefield's extent over the next 41 minutes. 9 additional mine contacts were identified within a 4 nautical mile radius. The picture was incomplete. MAD and sonar are not perfect mine detection systems, but it was enough to identify a lane to the south that appeared to be mine-free. The MH-53E arrived at 0:44 a.m., 52 minutes after the mine detonation. Its AN/AQS-14 A-side-looking sonar immediately began sweeping the southern lane that the MAD data had suggested was clear. The helicopter confirmed 6 contacts in the northern part of the corridor. It confirmed the southern lane as clear of detected mines at 1:19 a.m. Both ships began their slow transit south at 1:24 a.m., following the MH-53E's cleared lane at 4 knots, the minimum speed at which the ships could maintain steerage. They cleared the suspected minefield's southern boundary at 2:07 a.m. Identifying the mine-laying vessels took 4 days. The investigation began with the intelligence collection data from the 14 days before the engagement. Retroactive analysis of the maritime traffic records for the Northern Gulf identified 2 dhows contacts that had operated in the minefield area on the nights of the mine-laying operations. Both had been logged as routine fishing traffic at the time. Neither had generated a threat flag. The retroactive analysis found them through behavioral pattern comparison. Normal fishing dhows in that area anchored during the deepest part of the night and moved during dawn and dusk. These 2 vessels had been moving, slowly, at fishing speed, in a systematic back-and-forth pattern, during the hours of deepest darkness. The pattern, visible in the archived radar data, was not fishing, it was coverage. Both vessels had since returned to a small port facility on the Iranian coast, north of Bandar Abbas. By the time the investigation identified them, both were moored at that facility. Authorization to strike the facility was requested at the conclusion of the investigation, 4 days after the mine engagement. Authorization was not granted. The facility was a commercial port with civilian infrastructure and multiple vessels present. The legal and diplomatic issues raised by a strike on a commercial port facility, even one used by IRGC-controlled mine-laying vessels, exceeded the proportional response threshold for a mine engagement that had resulted in non-fatal casualties. The 2 dhows remained at their mooring. The after-action review noted this outcome and the tactical implications it created. Vessels that laid mines at night and then returned to a commercial port were operationally protected by their choice of post-mission refuge. USS San Jacinto transited to Bahrain naval support activity at 6 knots, escorted by USS Cole, arriving 43 hours after the mine strike. Her hull repair required 3 weeks in dry dock. The port shaft seal replacement required the most significant work. The new seal had to be fitted with the ship in dry dock, the damaged shaft section removed and replaced. She returned to Gulf operations 41 days after the mine detonation. The after-action review found 6 items requiring action. Finding 1, the intelligence gap on the mine-laying dhows. The retroactive behavioral analysis had identified the mine-laying activity in archived data. The same analysis, applied in real time, would have flagged the anomalous pattern within the first night of laying operations. The review recommended implementation of automated behavioral pattern analysis for all small craft in the Northern Gulf Transit Corridor on a continuous basis, with automatic flagging of movement patterns inconsistent with fishing or commercial operation. Finding 2, the influence fuse threshold setting. The mines had been set to detonate against vessels with drafts greater than USS Cole's, but within USS San Jacinto's draft range. A deliberate selection designed to let the destroyer pass and strike the larger, higher-value cruiser. The threshold selectivity demonstrated an IRGC knowledge of the draft ranges of the specific ship types in U.S. Gulf deployments. Finding 3, the MCM helicopter response time. 52 minutes from mine detonation to MCM helicopter overhead was the standard response time, given the helicopter's operating position. For 2 ships stationary in a confirmed minefield, 52 minutes represented an unacceptable vulnerability window. The review recommended positioning MCM-capable aircraft within 15 nautical miles of the track whenever Northern Gulf transits were conducted. Finding 4, the navigation lane. The standard transit corridor between northern patrol stations and southern fueling rendezvous points had been predictable enough for the mine layers to know where to place the mines. The review again recommended mandatory route variation for all Gulf transits. Finding 5, the lack of strike authorization for the mine-laying vessel's port. The review acknowledged the legal and diplomatic constraints, but noted that the practical result was that mine-laying vessels could operate with impunity if they returned to commercial port facilities after their missions. The review recommended development of a legal framework for proportional response to mine-laying vessels, regardless of post-mission location. Finding 6 was the one that every commanding officer in the Gulf remembered. 19 mines had been in a 9-mile stretch of the standard transit route for 15 days without being detected. For 15 days, U.S. Navy ships had been transiting a minefield. Only one had triggered a mine. How many others had passed without knowing? No one could answer that question. Stay vigilant. Stay informed. This is Navy Beacon, and we'll see you in the next one.